This story was performed in Washington, D.C. as part of Queer Cuentos, a partnership between Story District and the Latino GLBT History Project.
Let's give it up for Rebecca Pilar Buckwalter Poza. So my grandmother calls me Nene. I call her Nana. Nana moved from Arizona to North Carolina when I was born to take care of me. She was the one who found my first tooth and then pretended she hadn't so my mother could feel special. She's the one who taught me how to read. And Nana and I have had inside jokes since I could talk. I remember the one time that Nana scolded me vividly because it was like the world was ending. Nana was always the center of my universe. And as I got older, I realized how much more there was to appreciate about Nana. Nana had left Guatica for Bogota when she was 14 to start working. She left Bogota for Knoxville, Tennessee when she was 19. She told me that she decided the United States was her country when she saw women smoking and wearing shorts in the street. That's my Nana. And she would go on to raise 2 little girls by herself on a secretary's salary in Brooklyn when my grandfather died very early into their marriage. My mother would go to medical school. My aunt would earn a PhD. And my grandmother, after all of this, after she retired, decided to start volunteering at an HIV/AIDS hotline. This is the 1980s. My grandmother, who didn't have a high school education in Spanish, rose to a managerial position. She was very intimidated. She had a candidate once who had a graduate degree. Who was she to, evaluate this candidate? The candidate comes in and the weirdest thing happens. They won't sit down. And suddenly the candidate just says, I don't even know why I'm here. I'm not going to sit down, though. The same thing's going to happen that's been happening everywhere else. I'm going to say it anyway. In a couple of weeks, I'm going to start wearing a wig. And then I'm going to start wearing dresses, and I'm going to want you to call me Raquel. My grandmother, still very preoccupied with the graduate degree, hires Raquel. That's my Nana. In 2008, after working on President Obama's first campaign, I got 2 tickets to the inauguration. Nana was my date. Nana flew from North Carolina to DC, to National. And when she arrived, she was in her finest clothing, because that's what you do. You dress up when you fly. And she and I waded through the crowds to get into the inauguration. She's in a wheelchair, and I'm really worried. She looks, distressed. And it's packed. And so I lean over and I say, Nana, are you doing okay? And she goes, yeah. I'm trying to look really pathetic so people will let us through. Is it working? And she goes, can you believe these wimps? Try going to a soccer game in South America. Also my Nana. And we get in eventually, and when our new president starts to speak, Nana gets up from her wheelchair, she grabs onto a sapling. It's what you do, and she stands the whole time, and she is so proud. Never in her life did she think that her granddaughter was going to get to work to elect the President of the United States, that she would attend the inauguration, and I could not have been prouder to make my grandmother proud. Nana didn't want to go to the balls with me. It's all right. She said she was going to be too tired, but she helped me get ready each time. And the funny thing was, every night when I got home at 2 or 3 a.m., and I went to go check on her, she's very old. She wasn't just breathing, she was very awake. She was listening to audiobooks on her cassette player that she refused to give up. And she was so excited. And I would crawl into bed with her, and I'd show her every photo from the night on my digital camera. And of course, she made me go back like 3 times for every one. It was amazing. And when a couple years later, Nana got sick, I would move from Hong Kong to North Carolina to take care of her. it didn't occur to me to worry about coming out to my grandmother. I worried about her blood pressure. I worried about how much wine she drinks. I worried about the fact that she hates taking her pills. I didn't worry about coming out to her. My cousin Hernan could not be gayer, much like myself. And he's been out for 30 years. She loves him. She always asks about my friend Ashley from high school, whose name she doesn't remember. She always asks about that nice lesbian. This all seemed pretty promising. And I kind of thought that I'd laid the foundation or maybe had like the conversation. Some of you may be familiar with a genre of coded conversation that you have around delicate topics. So when I was taking care of Nana, we'd have a lot of drive time. All of our doctors were at least 30 minutes away. And during one of these drives, NPR is covering marriage equality. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go for it. I say, Nana, what do you think? And she said, oh, gays should have rights. I'm like, great, okay. For a starting place, certainly. And she goes, they're born that way. I'm like, awesome, fantastic. So then I asked, I'm like, so, but how would you feel if Mom were gay, or if I were gay? The longest pause of my life. She says, well, I'd be really sad. Like, oh shit. And then she says, because your life would be so much harder. Which is, perfect, right? Like, that's everything you could want from an 82-year-old Colombian woman. So I thought we'd had the conversation. I thought it was gonna be okay. But it turns out we hadn't, and it wasn't. The next year, during my first year of law school, I fell in love. Completely in love, partnered up, all the things. And, right, 2 dates in, no. So, my younger sister gets really sick, and I'm going home, and my partner wants to come with me, God bless her. And so, my mom tells Nana that I'm coming home, and my partner's coming with me. She was waiting at my parents' house. She was so excited to see me until she heard that. She was disgusted. She's horrified. She demanded to be taken back to her own apartment. She didn't want to be in a room, didn't want to be under the same roof with her own granddaughter. Moreover, we were not to tell her sister, her older sister, because Tuti was a real homophobe. I guess if there's like the Kinsey scale of homophobia, Nana's like a 4, Tuti's like an 18. And yeah, that broke my heart. But I thought when I went back to law school, like, at least I can compartmentalize. I'm gonna leave that there. And then the phone calls started. Or to be more accurate, the drunk dials. So, después de unos minutos, my grandmother would call me, 9 p.m., 10 p.m. I'd always been the one to call her. She rarely called me. It was always, well, I don't want to bother you, Nene. And she'd call me, and there were always 3 elements. My grandmother, the least religious person on the planet up until this moment, began by saying, I'm praying for you to be normal. And then the next was, I love you despite your personal problems. And then the third was, you know that I love you, right? You know that nothing has changed and I love you just the same. She wanted some kind of affirmation that this was a fine position to take. And I went along with it for way too long, probably 2 years of this. During dinner parties, as I studied for exams, as I got ready for the bar. And then I called off the wedding, and I guess without the imminent threat of a gay wedding or great-grandchildren with 2 moms, it was less pressing. Maybe she found someone else to drunk dial, I don't know. And I didn't start calling her again, though. It wasn't, so she started calling me. But over the next year or so, 2 of my aunts were diagnosed with cancer. My other grandmother was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and she and her partner, it was the closest thing that I had to a grandfather, passed away, short succession. And then I had to move to Puerto Rico, which I love Puerto Rico, and it's really hard right now, but it's also very isolating when you have like a tough job with very long hours and coming out of that kind of a year. And each call just got harder and harder. And these, you know, these pretty normal calls, they were like, hey, what's work like? Do you have friends? Are you happy? They always, I mean, they take a long time. It's like a lot of shouting in 2 languages because she needs a hearing aid, but she won't wear one. And meanwhile, like, it's not only frustrating, but the whole time I'm just dreading. I know what's coming because the sign-off remains the same. I love you despite your personal problems. You know I love you, right? And I don't know if it's just that I'd been through so much I could not take one more caveated I love you, or that I'd been through so much and all of the worst things that I thought could happen had happened that I just didn't fear anything anymore. But there came a night where I'm trudging home. I'm like, it's pouring rain. I'm slipping on the cobblestones. Obviously, I live at the top of a hill. And I'm carrying groceries, and she calls. And I always pick up because she's very old. She had her first cigarette at age 7. And I pick up, and it's the same thing. I mean, it's worse because it's raining. Like, we can't hear each other. And, you know, like, my nails are digging into the skin of my palms. Like, it's just come to a head. It's just somehow. And so she gets to the sign-off, and she says, you know I love you, right? And I say, no, I don't know that you love me. And she says, well, no, I do. I love you just the same. I love you despite your personal problems. And I said, Nana, to me, that means that you don't love me. That was it. That's all I did, and it was my turn to sort of repeat a refrain. That's all I said. That's what I said for the rest of the conversation. She's sobbing, and I'm sobbing. And it was horrible. And the worst part was that I knew in that moment that that's how we were going to leave it. That was it. There's not going to be any resolution. That was 2 years ago. That's how it is. And I think of her every day, right? Every day. Her art's on my wall. Her gifts are on my dresser. Plastic bag cannot cross the threshold of my apartment without my compulsively tying it into a knot and putting it under the kitchen sink. Like, someday, they are all going to be useful. So Nana's still with me, but Nana is no longer the center of my universe. But the universe is wide, and I found that there are so many amazing people in it who love me without a caveat. Some are here tonight, and I am so, so grateful for that. Thank you.
A todas las mujeres que hacen vino por todo el mundo.